Hello and welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, depending on where you guys are joining us from today. I hope everybody's having a fantastic Wednesday and week so far. Just to make sure that everybody can see and hear me, please find the chat and let me know where you guys are joining us from today. While you guys are doing that, let me just tell you a couple of words about the event that we have planned for you guys today. In case it's the first time you are joining one of our events, we hold our webinars, roundtables, onboarding days, workshops to share some actionable and insightful information with the SEO community about SEO, about SEO rankings tools, help you make the most of them, and hopefully give you something useful to walk away with, and that will help you boost the traffic to your website. Yeah, I'm still looking at the chat just to make sure that you guys can see and hear me. So if you guys can let me know, if you people, beautiful people can let me know just that you can see and hear me, I will know that we are good to go and that we can continue with today's event. Okay. So let me know as soon as, all right, I'm just gonna, all right, I see, now I see the comment. Hello from Belgium. Hello. Hello, great. Thank you for replying to me, Shabon. And yeah, we can continue talking about the today's event. So we're going to talk about international, the importance of localization and international SEO. And I will be your host for today's event. My name is Andrew Zarudny, and I'm part of the content marketing team over at SEO Ranking. And I'm today joined by an expert in international SEO, the CEO and founder of AS Marketing, Adriana Stein. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. Adriana, could you please say a couple of words about yourself and about AS Marketing?
Yes, absolutely. So a huge thanks to Andrew and the SE Ranking team for hosting me today. I'm going to talk about one of my really favorite topics, international SEO. And that's a big part of what we do at my agency, AS Marketing. So we specialize in international marketing. We're a full service agency, but international SEO is a big piece of what we do for all of our client projects. I'm currently based in Hamburg, Germany, but I'm originally from the US. So I'm quite an international person myself. And I've spoken at lots of events about this type of topic. And if you want to do more of a deep dive into how our processes work and things like this, especially as we've been doing international SEO for years, then please feel free to look me up on Moz or Search Engine Journal, something like that, or even write me on LinkedIn if you have any questions.
Yeah, great to have you with us. And I can tell you, our viewers, that we have already done a podcast with Adriana where she has already shared with us a bit of her experience and her background, with living in Germany, coming from the US, studying German, and going into SEO with the whole language. The challenge of the language makes Adriana the perfect guest for us today, and help us understand today's topic a bit more, because obviously a lot of our viewers work with clients and in teams, and at some point you probably are thinking about expanding your business, maybe to another city in your country. But a lot of you may think about expanding to other countries, and it's not as simple as just translating your English language website and just hoping it works. I'm not going to go into any details. That's why we have Adriana. But before I give you the floor to Adriana, I just wanted to let you guys know a bit more about SEO Ranking that put this webinar together. So SEO Ranking is an SEO toolkit comprised of over 30 different tools for SEO, and they are designed specifically to help agencies working with different clients in teams, and as well as for in-house professionals working at large corporations handling the SEO. So yeah, a lot of our tools are created specifically for the advanced needs of SEOs, and you can see the different badges up on the screen that we got recognition over the years from independent experts and from users alike. And just to sort of give a bit more information other than the generalized, like an advanced SEO toolkit, I wanted to specifically say that we have over 35 tools, from keyword research to backlink analysis to page changes monitoring to content editor, local marketing tools. So you name it, we try to have it. And if we don't have it, just let us know, and we'll do our best to implement that into our tools. Also, tools without accurate data don't mean anything. We do our best to have our own algorithms and different calculations that go into calculating every metric that we have. If you're interested in learning more, we have a couple of articles up on our blog that will let you know how exactly we calculate the data. And as I've said, that we since SEO ranking is designed primarily for teams working with clients, we have a lot of collaborative features that allow you to automate your reports, to have different levels of access for your clients and users. So yeah, be sure to check it out. Because a lot of, thanks to all the hard work that our team has been putting into and all the feedback that we've been receiving from our users, we are now trusted by over 40,000 different companies. Thank you. And that is what I wanted to say about SEO ranking, as like a plug for any of you guys who have not heard about us before. And before I give the floor to Adriana, I just wanted to say that everything will be shared, a 35-minute presentation. Throw your questions into the chat. I will keep my eye on it, and in case we have something, we will answer it in the moment. If not, we will have a dedicated Q&A where we will discuss everything that we have not been able to address during the presentation. All right, I think I've covered more than enough for this part, and I'll be looking forward to the Q&A session with you, Adriana. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Sounds great. Yeah, so like Andrew said, everyone will get this presentation afterwards. And in case you do need help with anything regarding international SEO strategy and implementation, please feel free to send an email, check out our website, as we're happy to help you there. So just to dive into the presentation and go over a little bit of what we're talking about. So we'll cover today best practices for localizing the site structure and SEO strategy. Very, very important, actually, even before you do any sort of translation or localization. Best practices for conducting keyword research and localization, and then some forecasting and ROI calculation examples as well, as that's also a big piece of things, especially nowadays, as marketers do have quite a bit of pressure to generate revenue regardless of the channel. And so one thing I wanted to kind of just start out by setting the scene by saying is international marketing is really part of the new normal. So there are so many websites and so many companies that are translating. There is a difference between translating and localization, which I'll go into. I would really say most companies kind of stop at translating their website, but it's a big piece of what they do because there's so much potential in really diversifying the market that you focus on. So we saw how many changes there are, like with COVID and the recession, and just in general, how fast customer expectations change, how fast technology changes. And so when you can not put all your eggs in one basket, basically, so not just focus on one market, but focus on multiple, then that's going to bring a lot more diversity. And as well as that, customers expect a really personal approach. So international marketing, maybe 10 years ago, I've been doing marketing for nearly 10 years by now. At that time, when I started, international marketing was kind of like just doing everything in English, and that was being international. But that approach really is not sufficient enough today because of the level of personalization that people expect and honestly deserve, because other languages are really awesome, and other cultures are really awesome as well. And so if you can really engage with your target audience, with your customers in a much more personal way, that's also going to give you a much better advantage over your competitors as well. And that goes for when you're going into new markets. There's a lot of opportunity in improving customer service, along with a higher level of personalization. And that's really the best case scenario for being successful in terms of international market expansions. But really to do this effectively, because every market is different, every culture is different. Sometimes, like our clients at my agency in the beginning, they will say like, I want to expand into Europe. Okay, well, Europe is like more than 50 countries and lots of languages. Not even every country just has one language. There are different dialects in every country. There's, for example, in Germany, there's Bavarian, there's in the DACH region, the German-speaking region, there's Swiss German, there's Austrian German, there's even like within that other like sub-regional dialects and like different ways of saying things. And so you also have to consider really the kind of mindset that you need, which really comes from setting up your operations for success as well. So SEO, of course, is a big piece of this, and you can definitely generate growth using SEO to expand in new markets, but it also needs to be complemented by really localizing a lot of your holistic marketing and also your operations. So of course, this is going to include things like your brand USPs, your competitors, messaging and cultural relevance. All of those things are going to be very different. They need to be very different because your buyer personas are different. So people will have different perceptions of a product, different issues surrounding one of their problems, from the EU to the UK to, whatever region, they're all going to be very different. And so you have to update your messaging for this as well. And then all of that also translates into or influences rather what you do in terms of your SEO strategy and how you set up your website and customer experience. And then the operations part is really important as well. So this should include local sales and customer service. So if you're going to do marketing in another language, even if you're going to localize your website into another language, it really shouldn't be that that's the only piece of the customer experience that's in that language. It shouldn't just be that, I'm living in Finland, for example, I'm being marketed to in Finnish, which is great. But then as soon as I, try to buy something or I want to talk to a salesperson, then suddenly I have to speak English, with someone in the US that has a 9-hour time zone difference. And we see at my agency, we see that there are a lot of issues that accompany this because marketing's job is to get the right people in front of your business to be ready to purchase. But if it's not followed up by the correct process, then it's going to be a big struggle, for part of that follow-up. So just look at localizing things operationally as well. So sales, customer service, payments, because people prefer to pay in different ways. Like in Germany, we're very big on cash payments here. Of course, online, you'd prefer a direct bank transfer. People don't really trust PayPal here, for example, or credit cards. So if you only had, a PayPal or a credit card option, you're probably going to lose some of your German customers as well. So these are all of the things really to think about holistically. And if you can really get this entire process set up, that's going to ensure that what you're doing for SEO is going to be that much more successful because the conversions that you generate then also turn into leads and sales. So I mentioned previously there's a bit of a difference between translation and localization. They're really interchangeably used quite a bit, but at least from a person who works really in international marketing, there is quite a difference, no matter which marketing channel that you're working with, but especially in the context of SEO, because this is so website content driven localization. So there's for sure technical pieces to it, but there's also, of course, the written pieces to it as well. So traditional translation, I would kind of put in the category of it's like, taking your website and turning it from one language into another. It's often done via machine translation, or it can be, even if it's reviewed by a person, maybe they still don't really know the marketing strategy. I would still kind of call that translation as well. Anything with like programmatic translation, that typically falls into this translation bucket in terms of these processes. But localization really goes a whole step further because you're making sure, I think one of the biggest pieces is just making sure that your keywords are relevant to your local audience. I have some examples later in this presentation where I'll go over that. But there can be a big difference between search volume and even like the meaning or the phrasing of different keywords for different markets. and different intents as well behind those keywords. So all of those things really need to be localized, because if you just focus on the translation piece, then you're not really doing SEO. It's just translation. That's not really doing SEO. International SEO, you're then taking all of that localized keyword information, and then you're updating all of that across the content, as well as if you have, or ideally you have localized your marketing strategy, for your tone of voice, messaging guidelines, USPs, things like that. And then also the correct SEO settings are being used for the multilingual site, which is a big piece that you should really make sure that you have set up from the very beginning before you do any sort of translation. And so if you just directly translate keywords and content, it often has basically little to no impact on SEO performance. And this is the number one thing that we find with the companies who come to us for help is, they've translated their website, even if the translation has, is a decent quality, it's been reviewed by a person, but then when you actually go and look at like the performance across that specific market, there's basically no traffic from that. And that's because the SEO localization part hasn't really been factored into that. So it is important to take those extra steps if SEO is a part of your growth strategy in that new market as well. So before you can really set up anything in a new language correctly across your website, you need to make sure that you have your site structure set up. There are 3 main ways that you can do this correctly. There are other ways that are like totally incorrect, but these 3 are essentially the best ways that you can do it where it's not an issue. So option 1 is basically where you have, like, say, for example, you're turning your website into German. So you have a German language is listed on your website. Then you have it on the subfolder. So that's, you have your .com root domain, or if you have another root domain from another country, .fr, .co.uk, whatever the case may be, then the subfolder is the /de part. Or you can use a subdomain, which is basically another domain within your main domain. So then that goes like de.example.com, or you could have an entirely new domain. So the best one is the first option because it preserves website authority or topical authority. And the reason is because the way that websites essentially are weighted is by, of course, all of the ranking factors that kind of happen across the entire website. And so when you can put your other language within that subfolder, basically Google can perceive that as part of the same website. And when you use option 2, for example, then it's basically a second subset of that website. So it automatically loses authority because it's considered, by the way that the link is set up, to be like a newer version or subversion, which is why it's called a subdomain. So you essentially are making your life harder in terms of growing, doing SEO in that new market with that structure. But I know sometimes, like, for example, if your website is hosted on HubSpot, you can only use the subdomain, and there's no really way around that. So you can do that route, but just know that, it will probably add to some time for you to really rank for some of the new content, because it's just perceived as kind of like a secondary website. And then there is also option 3, where you have an entirely new domain. I have come across some circumstances where CMS, and then they had a website trend, but they were also doing localization in addition, but their tech just wasn't integrating well together. And so they did decide to go for option 3. You can do this, but I would just really caution against it. If you can not do that, then it is best to avoid it, because it's essentially like a 0 authority domain. And so that's definitely, SEO takes time. And so the more authority you can kind of just like start with and push on to that new market, then that's really the best case scenario. So before you do any sort of, translation localization, just make sure to consider this, because there are so many issues that we find really, really regularly related to this that are not set up correctly. For example, like only the language tag is added after the root domain, which Google can't read that at all, so it can't tell which language the website is supposed to be in, or there is even like no like home for another language, and it's just mixed in together. And then again, also Google can't really tell which language it's supposed to be in. Using also like an automatic, like this Google Translate plugin on the website, so it doesn't change your URL when you change to a new language. It's the same thing. Google also can't tell what language that page is supposed to be in when you do that. So in fact, if you do that, it can even harm your home language strategy as well. So really try to stick to one of these three at least, because then you know you're set up to function well. Okay, so now that we've gone over site structure, that's when you can really start building out your concrete SEO strategy. And one really important thing to look at initially is just to find out who your local competitors are. And in SEO, and really in search as well, organic and paid search, there are always going to be a difference between local competitors and then also business or product competitors, because you can have businesses that maybe they sell the same product or service, or they have the same type of offer, but they're not really doing SEO. So they're still a competitor for you, of course, but they're not really a search competitor. So what in the SEO context, you really want to look at who is your actual search competitor. And then the additional layer in international is you need to look at who are those local search competitors. So who is actually showing up in that specific market for the primary keywords that you want to rank for. So the easiest way to go and check this is you basically just actually Google it. SERP location set up, and also the language. So SEO Quake is really good for doing this. It's a free plugin, and you can just turn it on and off as you need, and then it will change your SERPs to a specific market and a specific language. And then just go Google, something similar to what your product or service is. So something, bottom of funnel, like what someone would search for to buy your product, your offer, and then try, even if it's not, you don't know exactly the right localized phrase for that, it's still okay, because you'll still see who starts to pop up for those kinds of phrases. And then one way you can really tell how people actually use that phrase in the local language is to see how it pops up in the SERPs as well. So this is an interesting example because marketing automation tool, this is it, I've Googled here in German, the German version of that. But if you look, I don't know if you can see it because it's kind of small, but in the description, the SERP description of the first organic page that showed up, it actually even uses the English phrase marketing automation tools, but in a German phrase as well. So that's quite interesting. You'll find little, changes like that, nuances like that in every single market. So that will give you a really good idea of how competitors are set up, and then who you kind of want to pay attention to as you go. And from there, you can really just start doing keyword research. Really try to focus your keyword research on long tail keywords. That's regardless of the language. That goes for all of SEO. So really try to focus on what specifically describes your product or service, because you always want to start with bottom of funnel, because those are the highest likelihood for, if you rank for them, then you can get a conversion from that. So try to find what sort of word or phrase describes what your offer is in that local language. Even again, as I said, even if you only start with like a translated version because you're not sure, that's still okay, because you can still research it and refine it, but really focus on the long tail keyword versions. And then as you're going through and doing keyword research, then it will actually show you based on the search volume how people are kind of phrasing it. And then you can get an idea of, okay, maybe people phrase it mostly this way because this has the most search volume. And then you can kind of get a better idea of how that's actually or how it should actually be stated within the content. And then ideally you have also a local strategist who is supporting you with this process, who knows the language, who speaks the native language, who also understands the culture, and then they're going to be able to kind of point you in the right direction about where to go with keyword research. And so from there, you can follow a similar process as really with any language, that you just start building up a keyword map. So based on intent, whether it's informational versus transactional, putting like keywords together, so related keywords into like a keyword cluster, and then building your content based off of that, and then looking at how to integrate that topic into the title. And so this is really the best way to do to really ensure that your strategy in that new market is going to really start off in the right track. Because if you tried to do, for example, you have this already in English or another language, and you just took it and said, okay, Chat GTP or Google Translate, whatever, just translate all of this, and this will be our new content strategy. It really won't work. I would say like 90% of the time it's not going to work, because there's just different differences between what people search for, how people search for it, how much people search for it, how people phrase things, what they mean with certain things. So like in Germany, for example, because I know this market the best, that's why I'm giving this as one of the primary examples. But in the German market, for example, a lot of the transactional phrases in English are actually informational phrases in German. And that's a really big important thing to look at, because you actually need a totally different content type for that. So if you just took, your English landing page and then you localized it into German, but you need an informational German page, whereas your landing page was for a transaction, it's not really going to rank at all, because you've also missed you're matching your search intent in that local market. So when you do it this way, like I have shown here by kind of building out your own sort of keyword strategy, then this is the best way to ensure that you're actually going to be targeting keywords that are searched for in the correct way that people say them in that specific market. And then you can also set some priorities, because you don't want to be, of course, like working on entirely new content all the time. That's a whole lot of work. So rather, what I would suggest to do is kind of find, okay, here is something that is the closest match in my new market with my home market. And then that's what I'm going to focus on localizing really well. And maybe you don't need to change the page type entirely, or the structure entirely, or things like this that just add to the time that content goes live. So try to focus it on where you have those closest matches, and then also keywords that are, of course, conversion focused, because that's really going to help you generate ROI from your SEO efforts that much faster. Okay, just a second. Just going to take a quick drink of water. Okay, so there are a couple examples here where we've run into basically exactly this issue of and why it's so important to really localize your keywords. So in this scenario, a company based in the US has a highly popular heated tobacco product. They want to expand into Hungary with an SEO-driven approach. So if you look at heated tobacco, the search volume in the US market is 390. But if you look at the exact translation of the Hungarian keyword for heated tobacco, then it's 0. But if you had localized your keyword research, then you would find they actually refer to it as what we would say tobacco heater in English, and that even has more search volume than in the US. So it actually shows that this is probably a really great market to expand into because they know the product quite well. So this is basically the opportunity that you would miss if you hadn't really localized your keyword research. And also, if you use the incorrect phrasing in that content anyways, people are going to be like, what? That's not the way that we say it. That sounds strange. And that also detracts from your customer experience, which is very, very important to make as high level as possible when you're doing market expansions, because the thing you always want to remember is the local competitors there they're established there because they have a good customer experience that people are used to and they like. So basically, if you want to come in as like an outsider, you have to do that even better. And customer experience is really one of the best ways to really stand out and just really show that you know your target audience. So it's really important to kind of deep dive into the way that people phrase things. And so here's another example as well. For example, you need to localize a blog about what is process management from English to German to reach your German audience. And then you see this keyword in the US market also has 390 search volume. If you take the exact translation of what is process management in German, 20 search volume. But if you look at another way of phrasing this in German, or the way that Germans would probably search for it more, process management definition, that again even has higher search volume than the US one. So you really want to look at both like search intent, of course. So here you have something that's very top of funnel, but then also phrasing, the way that people phrase things. Even though this German phrasing with definition is very different, that's the way that people would say it in that language. And of course, when you then put that into the content, you just want to make sure it's grammatically correct and everything. Because from a German speaker example, you wouldn't use process management definition as like its own phrase. That's also not quite grammatically correct. But Google can tell these kinds of things. They've done a lot of updates with semantic search and understanding different ways of saying things that mean the same thing. So try to use it in the most grammatically correct way. And then also just use some similar phrasing across your content, and then you're going to make sure that you get both types of phrases here. But again, if you hadn't considered different ways of saying the same thing, you would have missed out again on a big traffic opportunity. So in terms of going to content production, once you have your keywords set up, you know what topics you want to write about, you have an idea of what you want to localize, then you just want to make sure that you keep to the right structure. So using your title, your focus keyword in your title, or something kind of similar. This is less strict than it used to be, I must say. Same with the description, but at least just make sure you're giving a kind of accurate description of what's in the content. Nowadays, this has become less important because Google changes somewhere between 60 and 80% of titles and meta descriptions on SERPs now. But still, you don't want to put something completely different than what's in your content. It's just going at the minimum to reduce your organic click-through rate from the SERP. So just try to make it accurate and use the same sort of phrasing. And then, as I mentioned with the URLs, the structure at the beginning, where I talked about site structure, this is really important here too. So ideally, if you can, use your language subfolder, and then you have your focus keyword as the slug, so that in part of the URL is localized. It's really important not to have that in English. This is another big area where we've seen issues with that, because Google basically crawls content through links. So if it has a link that's like half English and half another language, it can get really confused about which language the content is supposed to be in. And you want to make sure that your content is seen by the right audience in the right location in the right language. So this just helps basically with that process. And then just make sure that you, of course, integrate that keyword and the general concept across that content piece. Okay, so this is a really important piece because position tracking also is really connected to how you set up your site structure from the beginning. So again, you couldn't really track how well you're doing in another market if you don't have your site structure set up, because basically you need to do your position tracking based on your site structure. So based on like where the home of that market is, that language is, that's then what needs to be tracked. And you need to track them individually rather than as like a big market conglomerate, because you're not going to get accurate data. So especially when you're doing, more than two different markets, more than two different languages in international SEO, you're probably going to get quite major performance differences among different markets. So you really have to track them separately, not just really in your position tracking, but looking at also like how things are performing in Google Search Console and Google Analytics 4, making sure you have separate conversion tracking setting up so you can see how is content engagement, how are conversions within this market, even if you have basically like localized as well as you can, and have done everything correctly, you can still see major differences in performance because different markets are different audiences are different. And so this will kind of help you get an idea of where you need to optimize things. Maybe one market's not performing super well, so maybe you stop your efforts there. Maybe one market is performing a lot better, and that's where you can double down on your efforts there. So it's really important to make sure that you have especially your separate markets trapped, but then also like your conversion sources as well, so you can really understand where conversions are coming from. So if you have events for purchases, of course, in e-commerce, that's pretty easy to set up. Like if you use some sort of like form submission or something, and then someone pays. But as well for B2B, if someone is booking a demo or maybe they're registering an event like you did here, for example, then having all of that conversion tracking set up per market and per conversion type. And this is really important because that's really going to allow you to have the data to show how SEO is really contributing to the business. And this is very important long term because it will impact how it's really perceived by stakeholders. I find it very interesting that I started in SEO originally, but now I've learned a whole lot about paid advertising and that side of the business, webinars and email marketing and things like that, because we are a full service agency. So it's been a great learning experience for me to see how other channels are, I think, a lot more like focused on conversion than SEO has been traditionally. But now I think we're kind of in this new era where, okay, like SEO needs to be just as conversion driven as everything else we do in marketing. Our KPIs can't just be we, produce 4 content pieces a month and that's all that we look at with SEO. We need to look at the conversions that are happening, especially in B2B, looking at, like I have here, for example, you can do tracking with GA4 for like content types or content pillars. So, say you're doing event tracking for tofu, mofu, bofu, for example. Probably it should be more detailed than that, but just for ease of understanding, then you can look at, how many leads from that, if you're in B2B, how many leads from that actually were closed, where actually became like concrete sales within the business. And then you can really much more easily attribute that back to SEO. And so you can do that also within GA4. This is actually, it's a little bit old, sorry, it's from Google Analytics, but it looks pretty similar in GA4, and you just combine it with the event conversion tracking that you have set up. And this is really the ammo that you need to convince stakeholders over time. Okay, SEO is, providing this much value for our business, so let's keep doing it. Let's try to expand into another market and do the same thing. Or, it could be the other way around. This is underperforming, so let's see what we can optimize instead and perform a little bit better for. So the other piece of this as well, that's really important to look at when understanding SEO performance, especially when you're checking like the viability of a new market, is how much potential does that market actually have? And this, you'll get a really good idea of like product market fit or potential for that product offer to sell within a new market when you do such a forecast. So basically what this means is like in a new market, because SEO is a demand capture channel, so it focuses on people already know the product, and so people are searching for it, so they're going to buy it. So they have to be doing that in the new market for SEO to really be a viable channel. And it's definitely not the case that every product, that's successful in one market is going to be successful in another. So when you're doing this process as well, also consider, is SEO viable in this market? So this is using SEO Monitor. They're really great for forecasting. I think a little bit better for e-commerce really than B2B. But basically, you can just upload like a big keyword list, and then it will give you some averages based on how much traffic you could potentially generate based on how much visibility you have. So visibility is the percent of the keywords that you show up for in a certain level of ranking. The target in this particular forecast was, ranking 1 through 5. And so this shows sort of what is the impact here in terms of e-commerce. So, of course, in this particular instance, especially because this involved a lot of high search volume keywords as e-commerce can, then it's very viable for them, for example, to expand it into France. And so you can also see here things like seasonality. SEO Monitor is really good at showing that. And so this is really helpful also when you're just looking at like, how is my SEO strategy performing versus how I thought it would. Then you can kind of use this as a benchmark, or if you're looking at like expanding from, adding on to your expansions, like you've already expanded into, let's say, like France and Germany, and now you're considering the Nordics, then you can kind of use something like this to get an idea of where the best potential is. And then with B2B, it does get a little bit more complex because it's not just direct sales a lot of the time. So one way you can also look at this as well is what is the sort of like traffic increase milestone in, I won't say all of them or even the majority. I will say some businesses, let's say, that have a lot of search around their product already, and you have an established SEO strategy in your home market. Then let's say an average increase milestone over 6 months might be 30%. And then you can calculate from there, okay, if we produce this much content and then we increase our traffic by 30%, and here's our conversion rate, and here's how many free trials or demos we get from that. And then from those free trials or demos, then we look at average contract value and how many of those leads actually close. And then you can actually calculate or forecast revenue based on that. And so, of course, this includes a lot of assumptions, and some people in the SEO team may not even have the full information about this. So this is like the ideal scenario, but if you can, really try to get access to this information, because it just, again, goes back to like, here's the value that SEO provides for the business. And the more that you can showcase that, especially across different markets, which sometimes can be tricky because they seem very costly in the beginning for stakeholders. So if there's a lot of pressure, like, we need growth right away, why isn't this performing? Why is this costing so much? Then trying to have this data on hand is going to help that conversation, maybe to alleviate a bit of the pressure about what it can generate if you just give it a bit more time. But it's important to consider too, like the size of the market. So you'll see this first one is for the German market, and then this one is for the Japanese market. So not all markets are going to perform the same, especially since they just have different populations. So the Japanese market is typically a smaller economy than the German economy, although it depends on the product, of course. Electronics, it might not be that way. But in this particular example with this business, this was the case. And so you just have to make sure that you're, again, looking at things based on different markets and really setting up your KPIs to be realistic for that particular market. So one thing is just really don't try to set your KPI benchmarks off of what you do in your home market. That's always going to be more successful because you've had more time there as a business, you have more brand awareness. And so if you try to expect the same KPIs in the new market, you're just going to be disappointed. So try to set those up realistically based on the context there. Okay, so I think I've been ranting at you all for a while. I hope you have enjoyed the presentation here, and I have a little bit of a freebie for you. So I go into a lot more detail on how to set all of this up in terms of your strategy. So feel free to download the International SEO Playbook, and it will give you instructions for how to pull a lot of the data that I went through today, including further instructions on the forecasting portion. So feel free to check that out. It'll also be sent via email afterwards with the recording and everything. But if you want to dive in now, then feel free. It's free, so take a look and download it. That's it for me.
Yeah, great stuff, Adriana. A lot to unpack there as always. So if people were thinking that we're only going to talk about translating words, no, you went a lot more technical into like doing the research before you even consider approaching that market. So yeah, I will definitely be rewatching this. And I wanted to, besides thanking you, I wanted to promote, sort of shamelessly plug one of our tools that is sort of in line with today's topic. So if you have a lot of, well, not, doesn't really matter how many, but if you're working with Google Maps and you have different locations for your business in different countries, or maybe you have a client who has a couple of locations, we encourage you to try out our local marketing tool that allows you to keep track of your rankings and globally in specific locations, manage your reputation, reply to reviews, and also conduct audits of your websites and GMB pages to make sure that they are consistent across all of the mentions of the company and the services that are offered. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned this, so you guys, besides the 30 other tools that we also have one specifically for keeping tabs on local businesses. And we have time for the Q&A. And I want to start off with a question that actually I also wanted to ask you. So a question from Homer.
Okay.
I work with Dutch, and I can see that the SERPs have all sorts of different queries in a mix of English and Dutch. How do you navigate the balance between using popular keywords? Obviously, we have experience in German, but maybe this same logic still applies. How do you manage to decide, like the example that you showed us, marketing automation tools? It's German, but we use the English words. How do you, I'll just let you talk about this a bit. Just what are your thoughts
Yeah,
about
I mean, a lot of languages, especially in the EU, have this, and it's also industry dependent. Like if you have IT, there's a big mix of English and the local language. Sometimes it's even like 50-50 in one sentence. So I guess a bit of it is really just understanding your target audience. How do they actually talk about things? How do they phrase things? Do they use a local word? Do they use the English word? So try to understand from them as well. But then probably also you can look, like I showed with this example, look at the SERPs for the English word in that market and then the local word in that market. And you can tell what SERPs are coming up. Are they in English or are they in the local language? And then that will also tell you kind of how Google is categorizing those. And then you can get a good idea. But it's one thing you really have to just kind of keep an eye on. It's a big point for optimization. So because it may change over time. So maybe try the local language first, and if you see that that's not working so well, use a mix or something like that. This is just an example from Google Ads, so not so much for SEO, but we did have one project in Finland, for example, where they preferred the SERP, so the Google Ads SERP in English, but then they wanted the website in Finnish, and that was the best engaged customer experience. So those are the things that you kind of have to play with, no matter which method you're doing, paid or organic, to really understand what the audience prefers.
So you don't have any preferences over like this is how you're supposed to write this word over like this is how people are searching for it, because this is what I struggle with. Like I know that this is something that it's supposed to be phrased like this, but no way will people search for it like that in a native language. So
Yeah.
is that always investigating? You write a piece of content and then you check on the data just to make sure how it's working?
I mean, it's mostly just doing your research. So looking at what comes up within the SERPs, understanding how your target audience phrases it, and then looking how that performs. There's no like exact way of doing it because it's so context dependent and very language dependent. So yeah, it's an it depends answer. I'm sorry.
It's good. At least I hope that the Homer also will rest assured knowing that it's okay that if you don't have it figured out, you always try, because it is quite difficult
Yeah.
in the European languages to get this right.
Yes.
Obviously, you have terms like backlink. Like not everybody would translate the word backlink, and you have to like understand
Exactly.
how to incorporate it. All right, thank you, Adriana. We have another question from Arjun Logari. Can you share your experience in optimizing website structure and navigation for international audiences to improve user experience and SEO?
Yeah, and I love this question because one thing that I'm kind of I have on like auto repeat for myself is not only English deserves a good UX. So I think every single language that you have on your website deserves a really good UX experience, a really good customer experience. So um, a few things you can look at is do you sometimes, when you're localizing things, do you somehow need to maybe change your page structure a little bit? This can happen in the case of languages that have longer words and phrases than English. That if you are just to do sort of a translation, I see this really often in German, in French, in Finnish, in Turkish, languages like this that have really long words. If you try to, like, for example, putting the CTA, like just translating the CTA, you go from like this length to like this length on the page, and it looks really strange. So, maybe think of like how you kind of rephrase it a little bit better. Do you need to change your page structure a little bit so that the text fits in a little bit better? Also, things like images go a long ways as well. So, consider what type of images that your target audience is going to resonate with, and then do some image localization that way. Maybe not everyone wants like a big smiling picture like the American market might. Different markets will resonate with images differently. So that those are a few things. There's a whole lot of things you can do, but I think those are probably the two main ones that I come across the most.
Thank you once again. Another question we have from Jakub. What strategies do you recommend for conducting effective keyword research and competitor analysis in different international markets? Do you have maybe some tips or tricks?
Yes. I mean, I would say to go through the, the presentation that I gave today, because I think I went over pretty well how to do this. Feel free to look through the template as well. This is by far the best way for really understanding that from an organic search perspective, and for that the local element of that. So the local keywords and phrases, the local competitors, because they are very different in different markets. And it's always worth looking through it and checking for those differences. As you saw with some of my examples, the search volume differences are quite massive. So it's worth taking a little bit of extra time to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We actually have a question that is, well, sort of similar from Alex. The question is, apart from Google, what other search engines should we consider when targeting specific international markets? What has been the case for you?
Yes. So this also would depend on which search engines are relevant for which market. Like China and Russia probably have different search engine preferences. I think also Czech Republic may have its own search engine that people use a lot. So this is also something that we check quite heavily when we do international SEO as well, or international Google ads as well, checking if there's any other search engines that market uses. So you can Google that really easily. What do people use in X country for for their search engine, and you'll get an idea there.
But Google has been successful for you in the European market, right? You
Yeah,
haven't.
mostly. I would say in some Eastern European languages, Google is secondary. It depends. In Czech Republic, sometimes it's been secondary. In like Ukraine and these kinds of areas, it can also be different, but it depends, on the industry as well too. So, and it
I'm
changes all the
coming from
time.
Ukraine. I can tell you that we do not use anything. Well, we do not use the. I don't even want to say the name of the country that is bordering us, but like we use Google. So just to
Mhm.
maybe to update you, because some people used to use the other
Yeah.
option, but
Yeah.
it's been shut down for like, I mean, more than 2 years at least.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
sorry for
And
jumping in. I just couldn't resist
no,
talking.
no, that's fine, and that's important to point out because, like I said, it does change. You know, it changes also with regulations as well. Like the Chinese market, it changes what can be shown on their different search engines quite regularly. So this is always something to pay attention to if you're doing marketing to any other market. You know, looking at how users find things and just making sure that you're focusing on the way that they do that, the channels that they use.
Thank you. We have a question from Paolo, which is a bit different. Paolo is interested if you can mention the key elements involved in pursuing a city-centric local strategy.
Yeah, this is a good question because this is kind of another important element of like local SEO because there can be like SEO localization can be for country specific localization efforts, but then there's also like local SEO that can be either a part of localization or you can do that the same for your home market. So in the same language that you're originally working on. So basically, this means that you're not searching for, you're not trying to rank certain pages for keywords that are for a whole market. You're looking at ranking for city specific keywords. So this is really common for local services like hairdressers or electricians or plumbers, maybe architects, construction, this kind of thing. Anything that works like within a local area, and then you can in fact really just apply a lot of the same processes that I showed here really today, but you'll just want to check your keyword plus certain city location, and then that's going to give you a good idea of which pages that you'll want to create for that. But local SEO is also kind of like its own other part of SEO, so that's like a whole other topic that I could present about. So maybe at another time, but I hope that gives you a good idea at least.
Yeah, before we continue, can we stick around for 10 more minutes? Because I see a lot of questions coming in, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's great questions.
all right. And we have another question from Rupert. In terms of hreflang tags and canonicalizations, what are some common mistakes that you've seen, and how can we avoid them?
Yeah, I think the main common mistake I've seen is just not having them, uh, which, but now a lot of CMS systems they automatically add them in, or they should be. So if that's not something that's being automatically done, then definitely talk to your developer about that or your technical SEO and see if there's a way that you can automate that. But basically, the point of hreflang tags is you're essentially telling Google within the page structure which language the website should be in. It's just another element to make sure that Google shows the right language to the right person. So it's definitely something that you want to make sure that you have coming up.
Thank you. We have another question from Matt. Could you discuss the importance of adapting content to reflect local culture? And it goes a bit deeper into that. So, how local do you need to go? Do you create separate content for every English-speaking country, or for every state that you're targeting as well? Like when I mean state, when it says, I think they mean like U.S. state in this example.
Yeah. So this is very context dependent as well. So we get this question quite often, like for the German speaking region, the DACH region, do we need a separate section of the website for Germany, Switzerland, and Austria? In most cases, I would say no in this context because the differences are so small that the effort that you would need to do to manage those basically as three separate sites doesn't really make sense. But sometimes there is enough difference, like in big phrase differences, then it can be worth it. If you're doing city specific SEO in the US, then definitely you'll probably need to do pages at least, separate pages at least for each state or each location there. It depends on the audience. I've also heard from a colleague of mine. She leads the global SEO strategy for a B2B company, and they are very, very hyper localized. and they actually have separate content for northern and southern France, as they found just the engagement experiences and preferences were so different. So it really just depends on your strategy, where there's search volume, where you find that your target audience needs new information. But if you can provide enough localization, a good enough customer experience without splitting it up, then I would say go for that, because it's going to be a lot less effort. It's because anytime you add in a new market, even if it's the same language, you still have to localize it again, and that's just more effort.
And there's a question that sort of a bit a bit of a follow-up from Martin. How often do you adjust your international SEO strategies to stay relevant in various markets? If you have a couple of cases that you could mention, because you already said, like, if you write an article, you check back to see how it's working almost regularly.
Yeah.
But obviously, you have a lot on your plate, and the more languages, more work. So how do you
Yeah.
handle how do you handle being relevant? Well, you can say it about your experience. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, on average, somewhere between 3 to 6 months is okay. Um, 6 months is probably the most that I would sort of like set it and forget it. But I would caution not to change things all the time. And one of the things that people panic, for example, because of SERP volatility. So there's major changes in the SERPs, and then suddenly they've lost a bunch of keyword rankings, or there's been an algorithm update, they've lost a bunch of keyword rankings, and then they just go and change everything. And that's in the case where you don't want to do that. You don't want to panic optimize, because you want to actually understand why have these changes happened, do some investigation. Maybe it's just an indexing issue. And then you don't need to optimize anything. So first, just keep track of the data, because that's going to give you an idea of, okay, is this page staying somewhere between, I don't know, top 5 rankings, or has it gone down to like 30, over the next few months? If it's on 30, well, you definitely need to change something. But if it's sitting between 1 and 5, you're probably fine. And I just would leave it, because you're probably not going to get a whole lot higher than that if you haven't done it from the beginning.
Thank you. And we have, I think I'm going to leave it this as the last question from Sarah. So she's wondering about backlinks. How do you build backlinks in target international markets? Basically, is there some trick or some approach, or you just does language not matter in this regard, actually, because you're just sort of making agreements with people? Could you comment on building backlinks for international markets, please?
Yes. So I think the way that we really tend to do backlinks at my agency is much more focused on digital PR. And this is a lot more effective because, of course, it helps SEO when it's done from a quality basis, but it also can help brand visibility, brand awareness, and even directly generate leads and conversions. So ideally, your backlink program should really just be like your digital PR strategy. So you're doing things like guest content, content collaborations, even like SE Ranking and I are doing this webinar. So for example, my website would then show up on SE Ranking's landing page for this webinar. That's a good way to get a really high quality backlink. And then you're not, paying for things. You're actually doing things that focus more on engaging your audience. They're perceived as much higher quality. So this type of digital PR focused backlink is like the equivalent of 1,000 outreach backlinks, and it's like way easier, and you get to connect with your audience a lot more. So I really don't recommend to do any sort of paid link building that's even considered spam. So just really don't do it. It should be stopped entirely. And outreach, you can get backlinks that way, but it's just for the amount of effort that you need to do, it just doesn't really make sense for the return when you can focus on just doing a smaller amount. But that's a part of your digital PR strategy that's a lot more focused on quality, and you get the audience engagement in the same time.
Thank you, Adriana. I think we're going to end it here. I have a couple of other slides to share. Obviously, I want to remind everybody to check out the link to the playbook. and figure out how to do international SEO for your business or for your client's business. And if you haven't tried out SEO ranking yet, be sure to check out the expanded free trial that includes competitive research, website audit, keyword rank tracker, and the local marketing tool, content editor. There are loads of tools in there for all different sorts of SEO tasks and marketing tasks. So be sure to scan that QR code and check that out. It's a 2-week trial. And the next slide that I wanted to show you guys is inviting you to the SEO Ranking Academy, which we have a couple of courses, and we're working on expanding them. We have already a course on SEO basics, content SEO course. We also have a course from Myriam Gissier about how to promote your agency's course. And yeah, you can see another one about SEO ranking in action, which breaks down how to take advantage of SEO ranking to hit the ground running. And we're also working on another one about agencies that's coming up as well. And I also wanted to invite you guys to our community where we discuss all things SEO and SEO ranking with our peers and my colleagues. So if you have any questions about how to work with SEO ranking or how to handle any SEO issue, be sure to just post in that community, and our experts, partner experts, and our teammates will be sure to help you out. Also, we have our Do Follow podcast, which has been up for 1 year. We have 13 episodes up now, and you can actually see Adriana there as one of our guests, where we talked about keyword research for local SEO. So be sure to check that out. It's an easy listen for like 25-minute listen on specific topics. Yeah, so I can't really say more about that podcast, but it's hosted by yours truly. And also we have other stuff which we want to end on is we have the blog, we have our Twitter X page, we have the LinkedIn, we have our YouTube where you can actually see this exact video, and you can explore all the other stuff that we did, all the other webinars, onboarding days, workshops, just educational videos. So there's plenty more. And if you have any questions for Adriana, be sure to reach out to her. This information is not on the screen, but you can
find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you can or rewind or find Adriana on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, because I see that we did not answer one question, but I thought it was just too much. So if SEO Gabri would like to reach out to find out more about how to manage localization and big teams, you're welcome to do that. Yeah, and I want to thank Adriana again for taking the time out of your busy day to be here with us and sharing this information with us. And we'll see what we can do if we can have another conversation in maybe half a year's time, to see how this art has evolved and what else we can do to help businesses localize their content for the right markets.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been great speaking with you all, and great questions.
Thank you, Adriana. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.